Hey guys, my name is Cassidy and you're watching That Spooky Lifestyle, where we bring the ooky, the spooky, the creepy, and the crawly into our everyday lives. Now today we're not going to be doing a normal get ready with me video where we talk about something spooky and finish our makeup. Today we're actually going to be diving into the mystical world of tarot, and personally I think it's about time. In this video, I'll be giving you guys a general overview of tarot, as well as link you to some of the resources that I've used personally in case you want to learn a bit more. Then to finish off this video, we will be doing a death card activity. This is a great activity to do whenever you want to set new goals, so obviously January is a fantastic time to do this, but you can do it any time of the year whenever you want to get really productive. And the bonus to this activity is you don't need a tarot deck to do this, so if you're straight up a beginner, never touched a tarot deck in your life, you can still do this activity quite easily. For all of my tarot friends who already know the basics about tarot, I will leave a timestamp below so you can just skip to the activity if you'd like. But if you guys are ready to get started, let's jump right in. Starting from the very beginning, what is a tarot deck? So a tarot deck is a set of 78 cards, normally 78, some decks have more than that, but originally it's a 78 card deck with each card having a set of meanings attached to it, and what you use these meanings for is to answer questions. So depending what question you ask and what card pops up, that's your answer. Now a lot of people use these cards for predicting the future or asking questions about their future, usually related to their career or romance, things like that. But I have also found that a lot of people use these cards for kind of a self-assessment or to talk with yourself questions, kind of like an internal conversation, I guess. And how you ask these questions to your tarot deck is through spreads. And spreads are basically just organizing questions and the cards you pull to match them. The most commonly used deck, especially for beginners, is the Rider-Waite tarot deck, and mine's in a little baggie, but normally each tarot deck will come in their own box. And this is what the Rider-Waite tarot deck looks like. It's a 78 card deck, and why people often use this one to start is because each of the pictures kind of gives you a hint at the card's meaning, and so it's quite easy to pick up the meanings with this kind of a deck. But if you get, kind of a fancier deck off of Etsy, they may not use this Rider-Waite picture style, and then the pictures can be very vague and harder to remember. Okay, like what meaning is behind the 7 of Cups? Like I don't remember. So if you're a beginner, I highly recommend you pick up this Rider-Waite deck. I was so stubborn and I literally picked up like 5 different decks before I got this one, and I was so frustrated and I thought tarot is so hard to remember. I can never remember these. And then I picked up this deck and I was like, oh, I see. So taking a closer look at a tarot deck, it is made up of 78 cards. 22 of those cards are called Major Arcana. Now these cards usually represent major life milestones, not always, but more often. And then the remaining 56 cards are usually talking about your daily life. Now those 56 minor arcana, is what they're called, do have 4 suits. So there's the Pentacles. So this is an example of a Pentacles. You can see there's actually like circular discs in the cards. And this is supposed to represent like the material world around you, like things that you can physically touch, or it can be financial. And this suit is normally tied to earth. Then you have the Swords, and this suit is attached to air, and it's also attached to thinking and logic. And then the next suit is Wands, and this suit is attached to the element fire, and usually it means, you know, your passions, your creativity. And then the last suit is Cups, if I can find a cup here. And this suit is attached to water as well as your emotions. And when you start out, a lot of the books you read will always tie cups to romance or romantic endeavors or yada yada. But I would like to remind you that there are many, 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 many other emotions than just love. I do really think that when you're starting out, you will notice a lot of people push for love for the only emotion people have, but just a reminder, you know, you got other emotions. Each of those suits has the card 1 to 10, as well as 4 court cards, a page, a knight, a queen, and a king. Then I'll just put these all down. So basically each suit has the 1 to 10, and then the page, the knight, the queen, and the king of their own suit. So this is the suit of cups. But like the suit of pentacles, which is right here, is also made up of the exact same cards except for pentacles, so it represents something slightly different. And the suit of wands also has 1 to 10 plus a king, queen, a knight, and a page, as well as the suit of swords. It has a 1 to 10 plus the court cards. So these 4 right here are called court cards, and they normally represent like an actual person. It doesn't always match like the gender, so just because you pull a king doesn't mean it's a man. I would just go by like the personality traits that come with being a king, and again, if you want to learn more about tarot, it'll explain that. And then this is, yeah, the 1 to 10. Like each deck comes with, you know, Ace of Cups, Ace of Wands, Ace of Swords, and Ace of Pentacles, and they all mean, you know, kind of the start of something new pertaining to their suit. But yeah, that's basically what the minor arcana are made up of, is the 1 to 10 plus the court cards for each suit. Anyways, each of these cards has like a set of positive meanings with it and a set of negative meanings with it. And when you start out, you will kind of just do the basics. Like here, I have pulled the 6 of Wands, and again, we're using the Rider-Waite Tarot deck, so it will give you a bit of a hint as what this card is about. So for this card, we can see that this is a very victorious card, right? It's almost kind of like a winning celebration. This guy's, you know, riding in on his horse with their staffs in the air, celebrating something. So that would be the positive, kind of a positive interpretation of this card. The negative version of this could be like maybe it's too confident, you know, maybe you're not seeing pitfalls that are around you because your head's too high, you're not paying attention to what's around you, you just think you're constantly winning. That would be a great sort of negative interpretation of this card. Now with tarot, you can read these again positively or reversed. Some people take that meaning quite literally, where like if the card pops out and it's upright, that means it's the positive interpretation or it's the negative one. Other people don't do reversals, so they just take the card at face value, whatever it is in the spread. That's a personal choice that you can decide. Another thing to mention is I think people get very confused as what's the difference between a tarot deck and an oracle deck. So as you can see here, I have 2 different oracle decks and 2 different tarot decks. Now the oracle decks don't have any sort of structure. They can be whatever the artist or maker wants them. This is notes from the universe. So this one has text on all the cards, kind of has a rainbow feel with meanings on the back. And this oracle deck is the Moonology one, so it has to do with phases of the moon and astrology. And so as you can see, these 2 decks are totally different from each other and are also very different from the tarot decks next to them. But as you can see, the tarot decks, like they both have the Fool as their first card, the 0 number in the deck. And now my decks aren't in order, but the second card would be the Magician, and that would be in both tarot decks. So as you can see, tarot decks do kind of follow a set of cards in each deck. Like each deck should have the Fool, the Magician, you know, 1 to 10 of Cups, plus the Page, the Knight, the Queen, the King. They have a sort of structure that a tarot deck needs to follow, at least to some degree. They have certain cards that need to be in each deck, whereas the oracle cards have no structure, no meaning. They can just be their own thing altogether. So that is sort of the difference between a tarot deck and a oracle deck. Usually oracle decks are easier to start out with because they will come with this small little guidebook, and normally each card will give you a hint as to what it means, like prosperity lies ahead is what this card says. Whereas with the tarot deck, you do have to do more kind of memorizing because each card can have multiple meanings depending on if it's upright or reversed or what part of the spread it's in. So yeah, that is the difference between a tarot deck and an oracle deck. So with a tarot deck, there are very specific meanings for each card, and that is universal no matter what tarot deck you're using. Even if you're using one that doesn't have the Rider-Waite pictures, that card still has the same meaning. It's just harder to interpret because the picture doesn't represent the meaning as well. And I'll give you an example of that. This is a gorgeous deck that I bought on Etsy. I actually have 2 other decks coming from this company that I pre-ordered. And you know, some of these cards give you an idea of what the meaning is. Like this is the King of Wands, and there is a focus on it. There is a man in the photo, so that does help. This one is the 7 of Swords, and I just don't think it's as easy to interpret, but as you can see, this is a very gorgeous deck. It's got gold foil all over it, and I think it's really gorgeous, but it is harder to work with for me personally. Once I know the cards better, I'll be able to use it more. So again, the Rider-Waite tarot, I would suggest to start out with. So again, a tarot deck has specific meanings that are universal no matter what tarot deck you pick up, whereas with an oracle deck, each meaning of the card is different depending on what oracle deck you pick up. So that's something to keep in mind if you are a beginner. An oracle deck is a great place to start because it's a bit of a looser meaning. You can kind of just pull a card each day, look up the meaning, and you know, it'll give you a random thought for the day or a random thing to try. Whereas with a tarot deck, you do have to know like the meaning of each card, and it does take some practice, so it just depends what you're looking for. Once you get a Rider-Waite tarot deck, another great deck to get is the After Tarot. I thought this was such a cute idea. It's basically each card in the tarot deck, but like 5 seconds after this happened. So if you look at the Fool, here we go. This is the very first card in every tarot deck, the Fool. And as you can see in this version, in the Rider-Waite, you know, he's about to walk off a cliff, but he looks very optimistic. He's on his new adventure. You know, there's many ways you can interpret this card. And in the After Tarot, he's actually stepped off the cliff and he's holding on, but everything's still very positive. It's very interesting how they did that deck, that it's like 5 seconds after this happened. This book is one of the ones that I picked up. It's called Tarot, Your Personal Guide by Stephen Bright, and I use this all the time. I think it's a great resource for people just starting out in tarot, because when you open it, it gives you a general overview of the card, and then it gives you an example of the card in a situation, and then as well as gives you an example of the card as a person. So remember, depending on what question you're asking, you know, if you're asking about a situation or you're asking about a person, the card doesn't always mean the same thing, and this really gives you an idea of how to apply your tarot card to whatever question you're actually asking it. So this is my go-to all the time. I also have The Key to Tarot, From Suits to Symbolism. And I read this before my initial book that I showed you there. What's this one? Your Personal Guide. And this one is also helpful. This one gives you more like activities that you can do with each card to kind of help you better understand them and understand what they're supposed to be about. I've done some of these activities. I personally just found this one better as like a quick reference now that I know the cards a bit better. Sometimes I just need a quick refresh as to like, oh, what would that be as a person or with this card or whatever. So I personally prefer this book, and I think everyone should literally own this. 2 other things that I think beginners should be doing when they start out is A, having a tarot journal, and B, having a tarot spread journal. So I have 2 of those here. This is my tarot journal, so I will write down the date, the question that I'm asking, and then, you know, write down where I'm at the back here. Write down any of the answers that I get. It is really fun to like look back and like I asked questions about what would happen on Halloween, and then on Halloween I looked back to, you know, check my answers or check what I got. It is really fun, so I do suggest keeping this. Also just to check your progress, you know. So basically I write my question, I write what cards I got, and then I write my interpretation at the time. And it is interesting to see like what you thought it meant and what it did mean or what happened, you know. It's just interesting, and I think everyone should have a tarot journal if you're starting. And then I also think it's super helpful to have a tarot spread book. Now this is basically, let's start it. Dun, dun, dun. At the front I do have some of the tarot meanings in their main meaning and reverse meaning. You can do this too if writing helps you remember. It does for me, so that's what I started doing. And then I started keeping tarot spreads that I like. Remember, this is how you ask your questions. One spread that I do, this is an interview with your deck, this one. So if you immediately got your deck, this would be a great spread to do because you can kind of see like what you're going to be using this deck for. Like I remember specifically this one that I got when I did my interview spread. It was basically like, I'm going to use this for dreams or, you know, aspirations. These cards do look very dreamy. This is the Ethereal Visions Tarot, and it's a very light tarot deck. It's just very, yeah, very like dream. Reminds me, that's what it reminds me of. But another spread that I wanted to tell you guys about really quick is Good Morning Spread is a great spread to start out with if you're a beginner just learning the tarot meanings, because it's just 3 cards, and the first card you pull is the theme of the day. The second card you pull is good news about the day, and the third card you pull is the highest energy of the day. People do 3-card spreads all the time when they're learning. You can also just do a 1-card spread, so every day you just pull a card, look at the meaning, think about it, and then reflect on it once the day is done. Okay, this spread I do all the time. Personally, it's a 5-card spread. It's called Talk with Your Future Self. So the first card you pull is my present self. The second card is my future self will thank me for. Third, my future self tells me to focus on. 4, my future self tells me to cut off. And 5 is advice from my future self. I really like doing this spread. Now in this video I obviously can't go through each of the 78 cards in a tarot deck and give you their positive and reversed meanings. There's just not enough time in this video to do that. I might do that in the future if you guys are interested or would like me to do that, but for this video the only card that I'm going to kind of go in depth on is the Death card, because that is the activity that we're going to be doing today. Just so you guys have a better understanding while doing this activity. There's a lot of propaganda, worry around the Death card, and there shouldn't be, because this card doesn't mean death really at all. I mean, it does, but not in the way that you think. When you get the Death card, if you look at the picture, you know, you can see it's a warrior, just one battle. There is, where is he? Right here. You can see the king has fallen. What the Death card actually means is change. And it usually does mean like quite a profound change, because the Death card is part of the major arcana, so usually represents a major milestone in your life. Not always, but usually. And you know, we can see it's like this dark rider atop a white horse. There's people here mourning. The king is dead. You know, it does give you that feel of there's this whole, you know, empire change going to happen. You know, the king is dead, everything is going to shift. Although that may seem like it's sad, it isn't always. You need change to grow, to experience new things. So the Death card really means the death of something, but the start of something else. So a lot of people, you know, always see this card and think, oh my god, I'm going to die, or someone I love is going to die, and that's not what this card is really about. about at all. It's actually normally about just changing from one thing to another. So anything like a wedding could get the death card because it's the death of your single life and, you know, the start of your married life. There's lots of things that this could be used for. You know, maybe your pipes burst in your house and you have to move somewhere else. The death card would definitely apply to that situation as well, right? And those are quite big milestones in your life, you know, for some people. You know, a big move or a moving in even with your boyfriend or girlfriend or significant other. The death card would apply to that because it's just the death of something to start something new. So any big change like that is what the death card represents, and it's one of the reasons why it's one of my favorite cards. It's also got that like ooky spooky, you're not sure what's coming next sort of feel to it, so I also really love that about this card. So I am going to get all my death cards out of the decks that I have with me so you can kind of see how different artists do interpret this card. And like I said, different artists may interpret this card differently, but the meaning pretty much stays the same unless you get a very special tarot deck like the After Tarot, which depending on the photo might change the meaning, but even if it does, you could still stick to the traditional death meaning and your cards would still totally make sense. Okay, so like I said, this is the Rider-Waite Tarot deck, so this is the most traditional artwork that you will see with this card. So like I said, this is the After Tarot deck, and as you can see that, you know, even though they're in mourning, the sun has come out, you know, it's starting to brighten up, you know, even though it was the death of the king, there is light at the end of the tunnel. It will get, you know, good again. So as you can see, this card does slightly change the meaning, but you can still interpret this as a regular death card meaning if you wanted to. And just like that deck I showed you earlier that I got off of Etsy, this is their death card. So again, this one is definitely not like the Rider-Waite artwork at all. And again, see, as you can see, this one would be harder to interpret, that it's like a sudden change. Still a gorgeous deck. And like I said, some tarot decks have more than 78 cards. Some of them have less, but usually like a standard tarot deck should have 78 cards. But like this Etsy one also has 2 extra cards. One is called Shadow and one is called Light. Now, in a traditional sense, there is no definition for that meaning. In like any book you pick up, there won't be a light or shadow card because that's something that this specific artist has added to their tarot deck, and you will find those meanings in their guidebook that they will give you with your tarot deck, especially if they come with any additional cards, but that is not standard. Most tarot decks just come with the standard 78. So this is the death card in the Ethereal Vision. Again, this is more difficult for a beginner to see that it's a sudden change. And then the last one we are going to look at is my personal favorite deck. And this deck I got on Etsy as well, and it's just the major arcana. It is called the Ghoulish Garbs Terror Tarot, Magic Arcana and Deck Guidebook. I love this artwork. It's very monstery. And the cards are totally matte. It is just gorgeous. Okay, so this is their death card. Like, look at that. And even with this deck, like, you could still interpret the regular death card meaning from it. So back to the death card. Like I said, it symbolizes dramatic change. And if you were to get this in, you know, the reversed or negative meaning, the reversed meaning of this could be 2 different things. It could say that, you know, you're stuck and you're trying to keep everything the same and it's not working, you have to change, you have to grow. Or it could be saying that you're having too much change in your life and it's causing you to be like unstable because nothing in your life has that stability or that common ground. Like I said, there are a number of ways that you can interpret a card. Okay, now we can finally get into this death card activity. I did this activity last year. I really enjoyed it, so I wanted to share it with you guys. I won't be doing the activity in this video. I'm just going to tell you guys how you can do it because I think it's kind of personal and I think you should take some like quiet time to decide all the things that you want to do for this. So all you need is 2 pieces of paper. You can just do it with one if you'd like. And and I have printed off the death card on these pieces of paper, but you could also just like sketch a quick drawing of this, or just write the meaning of, you know, the death card on a piece of paper on one side of it. But basically, you take your piece of paper with your death card on it, and on the back you write all the things that you want to change, but you write it as though it's already happened, and it's a letter to yourself. So for me, when I do this, I'll write on the back of it, I'll say, "Dear Cassidy, you know, I am so happy. My health is better than it's ever been. I haven't had any problems with blah blah blah. I'm more financially stable. I just bought a car. I just, you know," and be specific. Be very specific in what you want, whether it's health goals, financial goals, career goals, romance goals, whatever it is, be specific. Like, tell exactly what you want to happen this year, or, you know, this month, or whatever time period you want to do this for. I like to do mine for the full year just because, you know, I ain't got time to be doing this every month, girl. But yeah, so you write all of that down like a letter to yourself. And then what you do is you rip this up and then you glue it all back together. So it's kind of supposed to, you know, signify that dramatic change that is supposed to happen for you. Now, like I said, I did this activity last year, and I just did it with one piece of paper. And I ripped it all up and I put it all back together, and I glued it in my book of shadows. Or, you know, my book of goodies that I want to remember in witchcraft, whatever you want to call it. So you can see it's got a lot of blue writing all over it. That was the writing that I did on the back, and all the black pieces are the death card ripped up. Like, I kind of put everything both ways, and I really like how that collage sort of turned out. And then these are just other things that I've added for my book that have nothing to do with that. But what I'm going to do this year is quite similar. I'm going to write my goals, my dreams, everything that I want to achieve this year on the back, but I'm going to do it twice, because one of these I'm going to rip up and glue to a new page, and one of these I'm going to put in an envelope and store it on that same page. Very similar to what I've done here, where there's kind of this paper clip and it's holding this flap here. I'm just going to make this an envelope on my new page to store my second letter to myself, because in a year I want to be able to look back and read it and see, you know, what did I want? Did I achieve, you know, all of it? Did I achieve some of it? Did I achieve none of it? I want to see what I wanted back then. Are my dreams still the same? Are my goals still the same? And you can't do that if you just do one paper and rip it up and do this. So that would be my only suggestion to you guys. It is kind of repetitive to have to write a letter to yourself twice, but if you only do it once a year, I think it's worth the extra effort to be able to look back and, you know, see how far you've come, or see if you've changed, or things like that. So I really enjoyed this. This is something that you should just kind of sit down, light some candles, put on some nice music, and do this for yourself. That's exactly what I'm going to be doing. Again, this does not have to be a January thing. You can do this activity whenever, and that's what I love about it. That is it. That is all for my first tarot video. I hope this was helpful. I hope you learned something. I hope it wasn't too confusing. It is hard to explain tarot without completely diving into it. I just wanted a nice overview video for you guys and to give you an activity to end the video with. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm excited to be back. I'm excited to dive into some spooky stories. I've been doing some researching and I am so excited for what's coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.